Hi, I'm Stefan, the BMW DIY guy, and do you want to upgrade your charge cooler in your BMW S58 motor? I'll show you how. All right, guys, let's talk about this project a little bit and the reasons why you might want to do this in your car. Now, in the previous model M2, the intercooler sat right on top. It was a relatively easy change. Now, your intercooler is where your air comes out of your turbos through the intercooler to try to bring the air temperatures down before they go back into your motor. Cooler air, denser air means more power. That's a good thing. Cooler air over time, less heat soak, means more power over time. So if you're planning on upgrading your car, running a tune, driving more enthusiastically, this is a great, great upgrade for you. In addition, probably as a means to save weight, I would suspect, the stock intercooler is a lot of plastic. If you push it really, really hard, you can begin to have leaks and other issues in the stock intercooler. That's not all that great. So I'm gonna walk you through this install. It's a little bit more complicated, which is why the length of this video is a little bit longer than my normal. But I'm gonna walk you through every single step along the way so you can do this work yourself. We're gonna be installing the Mishimoto intercooler, which is a fantastic piece of equipment, and let's walk you through it. Now, lastly, we're gonna have to put the car up in the air first because we're gonna have to drain our coolant. I'm always gonna say this, make sure you get your car in the air safely. Use Quickjacks, like I've got here underneath my car right now, check out my video on that, or jacks and jack stands on a level surface. Never, ever, ever do the work with just a jack. Don't trust your life to a 50-cent part, right? If your car comes down, you could damage your car. If your car comes down with you underneath it, it could damage you. That would be bad. Okay, so we're gonna get the car up in the air first, so let's do that. And then we're gonna get underneath the car and I'm gonna show you all the plastics you need to take off so we can pull our two drain hoses to actually drain out our coolant. All right, so before you get started, I wanna show you a little trick that I do. There are so many bolts and pieces that you're going to be taking out that unless you're really familiar with the projects, it could be easy to forget which ones they are by the time you come to take it out. So what I've done is I've laid everything out just basically on paper towels with notes. This is exactly where this came from. So I'm not looking for it later. I know exactly what I'm looking for. I'm really well organized and I know exactly all of my parts. So just a suggestion as you move forward. All right, so let's start into the car here, and we're going to orient to all of the 10mm screws we're going to have to take off to take all of the plastics off. So there's a whole series of them as we go around. So you can see here, all the way down this entire line, all the way around to the other side. They also come down this centerpiece here and here. You're also going to want to take off the two on each side, 10mm here and here. They're all the same screws here and here that secure these plastics to your underbody tray as well. Now, in addition, there are two 10mm here and here in each wheel well. You could potentially take your tire off if you wanted to. I don't see any reason you could just reach up and just take these out, to take all these trays out, okay? So I'm a big fan of an impact wrench, so go ahead and just use that and a 10mm socket and get all these off. I'm gonna walk through all of them and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. All right, so looking at driver's side, you can tell all the plastics are off now, all the way across. I'll walk through it here really quickly. It's actually 3 screws on the side, 1, 2, and 3 back here in that corner to drop that corner piece out. But there's kind of an L shape or U-shaped piece that goes here in front. So that one comes off first. And then there's all of the 10mm down the nose. Then the center piece drops out with all of the 10mm keeping that on. And then these corner wings will come out with the 10mm across front and these 3 across the back, and it'll all drop out. Now do be careful. You probably have a lot of gravel. I mean, my car's only got 3,000 miles on it and I'm amazed at the amount of gravel that came out. So just be careful you don't get anything in your eye. All right, so go ahead and get all that and set that safely aside. And we're gonna move on from there. All right, so the last bit of plastics you're going to want to remove are these back here on the back side of your main tray. Again, 10mm all the way down. So pull them all the way down this edge, feed this out, and there's one on each side. Then we're going to get to the braces underneath, but we'll talk about that in just a second. So go ahead and remove these last 2 pieces of underbody plastic. So once those last bits of body plastic are off, now you may be a little bit tight if you're using a Quickjack like me. There's 2 screws that are probably going to be covered by your Quickjack. You can just use a ratcheting 10mm wrench to easily get at those 2 10mm body screws. Now you've got a whole series of 16mm bolts, and you have 2 all the way back in the corner back here. So you've got 2 on these arms and all the way around the perimeter of the stiffening plate itself, all the way around. Well, now, what I normally do is I will do the perimeter. I will do the two corners. I'll come all the way around the perimeter because the center ones here and here will help hold this in place because it can be a little bit heavy. So if you're doing this by yourself, I will do all the way around the perimeter first, take all those off, and then I can brace it up while I take off the remaining two and then drop the stiffening plate. Okay, so go ahead and take all those off and take this off next. All right, so as you can tell, the stiffening plate is off, so now we want to drain the coolant. Keep in mind that with the stiffening plate, those wings back in the corner, they can be a little bit hard to get to if you're not up on jacks. I just used a 16 millimeter on an extension and a wobble and was able to get to them just fine. If they're super stiff on you, you can go ahead and use a breaker bar just to get them loose, and then you can use your impact wrench. So now, we're looking over here at the passenger side. We're looking at the secondary radiator right here. We've got our coolant connection right here that's got one of those little like wire style hooks on it. You just want to reach in and pull the pin on that out and then back this off. And you're going to want to have a bucket or something similar to catch all of the coolant that's going to come out. So I'm going to do both sides. You do the passenger side first and then go ahead and do the driver's side and pull these connections and get all of your coolant out. All right, so here we are looking at the driver's side of the car. You can see the oil cooler right here. And now that the front plastics are off, we can see the bottom connection. This is the hose for your heat exchanger right here. So you're going to want to use like a hooked pick tool, get up here and pull down on that little kind of a little horseshoe collar that goes around and holds it in place. Pull it down and then back this hose off. Now, be prepared because you should have a bucket ready. You're going to get coolant out. If you haven't pulled the cap on your expansion tank, do that now. Because that will allow enough pressure for it to drain out. So go ahead and unclip that and drain out your coolant. All right, you can probably still hear my coolant draining, but to save time, so I'm not just sitting and waiting for that to get done. And my car is still in an elevated position because once you get all the coolant drained, you can lower it back down to make it easier to work in the engine bay. But for now, you're gonna wanna take your engine brace off. If you have the factory engine brace, you've got a series of 15 millimeter nuts all the way around. I have the Keys Motorsports one, which is similar. Now also, if you're following this with a G80 or an M2 for that matter, so an M3, M4, or an M2, there's a little bit of space difference. In the M2s, your plastics come down and partially cover the nuts here of your brace. On the G80s, it doesn't. So go ahead and pull those out to get your engine brace off, then go ahead and pull your engine cover off. All right, so go ahead and get that done while we wait. All right, y'all. So car's back on the ground as the coolant's all drained out, so we're good to go there. Now, we're gonna wanna take our intakes out. I have aftermarket MST intakes, so that's gonna be a little bit different. If you have the factory intakes, they're held in by rubber posts on each side, so you loosen the worm drive on this side and then lift the whole box out. All right, so now that your intakes are out, you wanna take this evaporation hose off. You pinch and pull. I found if you push down a little bit, it relieves some of the tension on the connection and helps you to get this off more easily. Now you can lift the cover off your ECU. I'm gonna pull this off both ends and get your cover out. Now, while we're here, you wanna go ahead and unplug this, or pull off this connector right here, and also unplug here. That's your typical little pinch connection to pull that off, and go ahead and pull this clip off. Now, we're gonna do a trick here because we're gonna have to unplug our ECU. Now, if I haven't said it before, make sure that you've pulled the negative post on your battery. Now, these all kind of lay in a certain order, and it might be hard to put them back in the wrong order, but I'm always concerned about that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take a little bit of painter's tape around the cabling for each one and number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way back. There's some color coordination on some of them. I just wanna make sure that when I put these back in, they go in the right fashion. So you depress the little clip, you walk it forward, and then the plug comes off. And then as I unplug them, I'm gonna put the painter's tape on and label each plug. So go ahead and get your cover off, get that hose off, get your covers off, get this clip off, and then unplug your ECU. All right, so it's not out entirely yet, but I just kind of wanted you to see the process. So obviously I'm numbering them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 as I go back. The side plugs here are the same, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4. Now if you look way back in the back, there's 2 more plugs side by side. So I'm gonna call that 5 left and 5 right. Same thing back here, there are 2 plugs on the sides. So I'm gonna call it number 1 because they're lined up backwards. Number 1 left, number 2 left. That way, as I go through all these, I know exactly where these go. Okay, so keep walking through and taking the rest of these out until you have the entire harness free. Important as we move through this. So this last two ones here on the left, number 1 and number 2 that I pulled off a few minutes ago, you want to pull the plugs themselves up and off their little clips, because that is part of what keeps the wiring harness on. And then lastly, you want to take this big plug here off the back. You can see that red locking tab. Pull up on that locking tab, and then this plug will come free. Then at that point, you can see the clips here and here. Also the clips here. You're going to want to loosen those, and then you can pull the entire wiring harness and lay it up across the top of the motor. Plug this now, simply squeeze on both sides, pull it off and set that aside. We're going to want to pull this bracket off as well. If you still have this clip on right here with this wiring harness, you're going to need to get this off. These fingers are really tight, but you're going to need to get this off because the entire ECU bracket's going to come out. So as you work on this, you are going to need to take this off. I was hoping you wouldn't have to, but you are. So just work that off. This plug is going to have to come off. You reach from behind and you work at the little clip, and then you can walk this plug forward and off as well. Okay, next thing we're going to do after that is take our ECU out entirely. So once we have that one cable unplugged, you can come back here to the back. There's these two little plastic fingers that you can pry on those plastic fingers, and you'll see the wiring harnesses back here in the back start to come free as well, because there's also one down at the bottom. Once you have those free, you can pull out the 10mm here, and take your ECU box out of the car. All right, so your ECU is out, and it's a little bit easier to show this back section where you've got those 3 wiring harnesses that come in low, middle, and high. They're actually sitting in a tray. All 3 of them are sitting in a tray. You pull an upper locking tab and the entire tray pulls out, so you don't have to separately take out all 3 of those wiring harnesses, which makes it a lot easier. You know, I would also say if you were thinking about unlocking your ECU, now would be a good time to do it. All right, let's set this safely aside and we'll move on. All right, so you're gonna wanna take off this overflow hose off of the reservoir tank back here. There's a little spring clip. You're gonna get really good at these. You just pull up on the loop to unclip it, like that. There should be a pop. Go ahead and pull it off. Do the same for the other side, and just like that. Okay, so go ahead and pull that and set that hose safely aside. And we're gonna work our way through a whole series of hoses. Now right down here on the bottom is a hose that runs over the top of your auxiliary water pump. There's a little clip here in the top that you just want to pick at. When you pick at that, it'll come undone. You can just pull the fingers of that clip apart and then pull the hose up and loosen free from the top of the auxiliary water pump. Okay, so go ahead and set that hose aside, get that done, and I'm going to show you walking through the rest of the hoses we're going to disconnect. All right, so we're going to be working our way around to actually taking the water pump itself out. You want to undo this main feed line right here. So again, undo the clip, pull it free, like that. Now on the front of the water pump, it's going to be a little bit hard to see on the camera, but it's really easy to see by eye. You've got the same thing. You've got a hose coming off the front of the water pump, so you want to get in here, undo the clip, pop that up, go ahead and pull the hose off, just like that. A little bit tight for space, but it'll come off. And then in addition, you've got another big hose assembly that comes in at the top right here. So pull those 3 off, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to pull the wiring off the back of the pump and pull the nut holding the pump in. But we'll do that in just a second. All right, let me give you a little bit of a closer look here. You've got the power connection here at the back with your typical little white tab that you press back, and then the plug will walk off. Go ahead and take out this 10mm nut right here, set it safely aside, then go ahead and pull the pump up and out of the car. All right, next, you want to take 1, 2, 3 of these lines off. So the first one has a little wire clip. Again, just pull down and pull it up and off. This is one of those squeeze clips, and it's kind of hard to get at it. The squeeze appears to be at the top and bottom. Squeeze it and it'll come off. Then you've got a little wire clip here on the back to get the back one off. So go ahead and take all 3 of those off next. All right, so the last thing you want to do down here on this bottom edge, now that the 3 hoses are off, is remove the electrical connection off the throttle body right here. You're going to use a pick tool, lift that gray center tab just a little bit, and push back, and the plug will come off. Then we're going to switch back up to the top and go ahead and take this 10mm nut off next. We're going to go ahead and take this off that post right there. Go ahead and unplug sensor here, sensor here. There's a squeeze clip underneath this sensor plug. You're going to want to squeeze and unconnect that hose, pull it out of the clips here. walk the remainder of this hose down, free of those clips, and lay it aside. Go ahead, once you have this sensor unplugged, go ahead and pull all these clips off, leaving essentially the top of your intercooler bare. All right, up next, we want to take out 4 E6s. 1, 2, and 3 and 4. 2 for the rail and 2 holding the reservoir on. That once it's free, we're kind of push it down and back out of the way because we're going to have to pull some hoses out from underneath it. With the reservoir out of the way, you can see the one last connection right here, kind of behind the tag. Same thing, spring clip, pull the clip out, go ahead and back that hose off. Now after that, look all the way down here at the bottom, we're going to have to pull the large intake hose here on the bottom of the intercooler. So I actually have the Mishimoto upgraded charge pipes. So I have a worm drive clamp and a different style hose, but I actually have the OEM one. So let me grab that and I'll show you what that looks like. So the OEM pipe looks like this underneath. It's coming down to your Y pipe. It has the same sort of horseshoe style kind of clips on it. Now this has changed a little bit because of me taking it off, but you can grab the arms and push those arms out to get it to unlock. Those arms are normally on little clips right here that hang onto it. That can make it a little bit difficult to maneuver sometimes, but you're gonna push that up and out to get it loose from the bottom of the intercooler. In my case, I've got a worm drive and a different style pipe. So if you've got an upgrade, go ahead and loosen that up. But take off that back hose and loosen up the bottom of your intercooler pipe. Right, now it's time to take it out. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 millimeter bolts holding this on. So go ahead and just loosen those. As soon as they're loose, just grab on either side and gently lift your intercooler up and out. Make sure that you do it really gently, just in case you missed any connections or snag on anything, but go ahead and take it and lift it out of the car. Okay, when I said take it out slow and gentle, I mean it. So take it out very, very carefully, because in this case I found I still have a wiring harness clip right here, right at the very, very bottom. And plus it wants to snag on everything when it comes out because there's so many edges and clips. So go ahead and unclip this last wire, take it out, and then we're going to start transferring components. All right, so what we want to do is take off the throttle body adapter from the bottom of the intercooler. This is actually the Mishimoto one. Your stock one looks like this. It's similar, just black plastic. So go ahead and take out these 3 T30s and set this aside. All right, now we're going to want to remove the throttle body from the intake itself. There's 3 10 millimeter bolts, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to want to remove both of these grommets here and here simply just by pressing them out. Also remove this gray clip, pull this up and away and get off the original. Now while you're here, there is a gasket on this side and on the other side. Inspect them for any damage. If this is a G87, probably not because the car is probably brand new, but make sure to check those and if need be, replace them. All right, then flip it over. Go ahead and take this T30 and remove your MAF sensor. Just take it out very carefully. I'm always really careful on these because they can be a little bit fragile, so don't crank on it really hard. All right, so we want to take the last of the hardware off of the stock piece. So we want to take your MAF sensor out. That's T30. Take that, set that aside. If you have any of those wire harness clips left when you took off the wire that came over the top, make sure that those come off as well. And then go ahead and take off the 2 E8s for the bracket on this side. So take both of those out and set that aside. All right, let's start putting the new one together. So first one, I'll pull the plug out of this side. Go ahead and pull out the cap here. It says torque to 20 foot-pounds, so we're gonna do that. I'm gonna start just by hand threading it. Go ahead and get this into place. Now, also we're gonna be putting the engine cover stand on because I'm gonna keep my engine cover on, which is going to go right here. I'll tighten that down in a moment and get that threaded in. But so go ahead and get this torque down and go ahead and get your engine cover post on, assuming you're going to keep using your engine cover. All right, then just a reminder as we go through this, there are enough bits and pieces and Mishimoto's done a great job of labeling everything in bags. So be very careful that you just don't open everything. I'm very careful and I open things over time. So I opened up the brackets bag. I have 2 of these button head screws, 2 of the longer button head screws. This is that back bracket, that OEM back bracket. So go ahead and just put that on and tighten it down. Once you have that in place with these button head screws, this is a 3 millimeter Allen. I'll get one secured for right now. And then In the map and evap rail, there are also longer button head screws. Take out one of them, go ahead and pull out the plug right here, and that's actually where your MAF is going to go. So go ahead and get this rail secured and get your MAF secured. All right, so I've taken the plugs out of these 6 holes. If you're planning on running meth, this is where you would install your meth injectors. It's always something you could do later if you're not doing now. If not, you want to use these plugs. So these have a 17mm head on them, and you're just going to screw them into all 6 of these, and then torque them down to 10 to 12 foot-pounds, which is basically just snug. All right, so go ahead and get all 6 of these installed, and then once that's done, we're going to be installing a bracket here and here, and I'll show you what specific bolts those are, and we'll get those installed. All right, so first of all, you want to take this bracket with 2 flanges on it. You can kind of see from the orientation of the name, the orientation of the bracket itself. So these are the smallest screws out of the brackets bag. This is a 2.5mm Allen wrench. So we just want to get these secure. And these are just going to be snug tight again. They don't have torque values, so you just have them down and snug. So go ahead and get those secured. Just like that. Good, good. And then you have one of the longer screws out of the same bracket bag. You've got the single flange, points upwards, kind of that sloped angle to it. You want it pointed upwards, and this is a 3mm Allen, as I grabbed the wrong one. Sorry, guys. I dropped it. Hey, video outtakes. All right, so just go ahead and get that snug down, just like that. This is a 3mm Allen, so you can see the angle that this little bracket goes on. Go ahead and just snug that down as well. Just snug tight. There isn't a torque value on this. There you go, just like that. One of these brackets off the stock rail. So go ahead and pull this bracket off. It's got little fingers that help hold it into place. We get this off and install right here. The little fingers will go into the hole, so it'll be in this orientation on this plate. Now, one of the wiring harness brackets goes up here. Most of my wiring harnesses are left behind that are still on the wiring harnesses in the car. So I'm just going to clip that into place when I reinstall the wiring harness itself. Okay, so the last thing for brackets is you're going to take one of the supply brackets. It only goes on one way. You're going to take the longer and bigger of this button head bolts out of the brackets bag. And again, this is a 3mm Allen, so you're just going to secure this down into place, and these just have to be snug. All right, on this side, so go ahead and take the plug out and put the fitting in. This is your evaporation line fitting, and this is a 25mm socket. You want it to 20 foot-pounds of torque. Then we're going to move to this side and install this bracket. You can tell flange up towards the body of it. Use the last 2 of the small bracket screws and put them on snug down tight, the 2.5mm Allen wrench, and then go ahead and take the small grommet and fit that into place. All right, so fit all that into place here, and you'll be good to go. Okay, so back here at the car, we have the evaporation fitting that comes back here to the solenoid. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this pipe off. We're actually gonna raid the fittings off of this hose. But this is your typical squeeze sort of scenario. So you're gonna squeeze it and then work this pipe off. So go ahead and take this pipe off, and then we're gonna get a heat gun, and we're gonna take both of these fittings off. So this is the hose that we're gonna transfer to, and just use a heat gun. You could potentially cut these off with a razor blade. It's not recommended because you might damage the gasket that's on the inside of this. Just use a heat gun, warm it up until you can just work it and work it out. Then you're going to transfer it to the new hose and secure with a worm drive on both ends. Now what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to have the fittings in essentially the same positions that they are on the OEM. So just keep that in mind as you look at it, how it's set up. this fitting's pointing that way, this fitting's pointing that way, and have the same setup on the new hose. All right, so come back with your newly assembled hose. Go ahead and snap it back into place here on the solenoid. Get that to pop in right there. And then go ahead and pull off the one on the front as well. It's going to be the same squeeze fitting, and go ahead and take that off. And we're going to do the same thing. So once you have your fittings in, and actually I want to show the fittings here in the orientation, what it looks like. So you can tell that the squeeze fitting is set to the bend in the hose. The sensor is in straight at the top, and their orientation to each other. So this is going to route differently once the new intake is in. But go ahead and snap it back into place right here. Go ahead and just press it in, and it can just sit. Now, while we're here, if you look down below, you've got the factory mount with an E10 down here at the bottom. Go ahead and take that bolt out and take the factory mount point out. So once you have the factory one out, you can install the supplied Mishimoto one. You can tell that there's a key in it because there's a little flange at the top of the bolt. You use the existing OEM bolt to put it in, snug it down. Okay, so last couple of prep things before we reinstall back into the car. Now, Mishimoto actually recommends that you put some painter's tape across the face of the intercooler when you install it, because there's so many hoses and different things you're going to be putting in. You don't want to have this scratched up and looking terrible. So I'm just going to use some painter's tape to come across the face of this. And then I'm going to tape this all off nicely. Once this is done, I'm going to flip it over, and we're going to be looking at the gasket. Now, you can reuse the OEM O-rings if you pick them out, or you can use the supplied gasket by Mishimoto. I'm going to use the gasket. Do not use both, one or the other. Okay, so I'm going to use the Mishimoto gasket. I'll show you that in just a second. All right, so go ahead and pull the protective film off. Make sure it doesn't leave any residue behind, and you've got a nice clean surface to work with. Again, you can use the OEM gaskets that would go in. You can pick them out of the OEM piece and fit them in, or use the big full gasket provided by Mishimoto. I'm going to use their gasket. So it's got these little fingers on it where the gasket will fit over the top of these, but it is possible as you're fitting this down into place that the gasket can fall off. So just watch that really carefully as we go through. And I'm going to do my best to walk you through each step as we fit this back in, but it's really going to be a matter of just some patience and time to fit it back into place, past all of the different obstructions as we get it back into its correct position. All right, so get everything routed and kind of set up in place for when you're ready to go. Make sure that you have it really as organized the best you can. You don't have anything set up strangely. Now, one recommendation. Now, this is the throttle body connection. As you set the intercooler in initially, go ahead and plug this in, because it's going to be very hard to reach once it's down into place. So plug this in when you're first setting the intercooler in, and snap that lock in, so make sure that your throttle body is plugged in and ready to go. And then on the rest of it, just walk your way around, make sure that everything is set up in the right places. Everything is as neat as it can be. This evaporation line, you may have to pull back gently, just ever so slightly, to get it to fit in a little bit better. But just slowly work this down into place. Double check your gasket that it's straight once you get it into place. And then also you can look from above through the bolt holes in the intercooler for those 7 bolt holes to make sure that it's lined up properly. Okay, so go ahead and just slowly work it down into place. Plug in your throttle body first and get it set back into the correct position. All right, so once you have it fit into place, including the boot down underneath, make sure that you have that connected and is seated properly in your intake boot coming up from your Y pipe. Okay, and all the rest, your new hose is going to come here over the top. Your new hose here comes around to the bottom, and then the gasket. So the gasket probably makes it a little bit harder to do the install, because you have to fight to keep the gasket on as you fit it into place. I'm going to assume it's better than using the OEM O-rings, or Mishimoto wouldn't have included it. So it's a little bit of a battle to get it into place, makes it a little bit harder, but I did get it worked out and get it installed. Okay, so now I obviously still have some ports here that are plugged. I'll deal with those in a second. Now your 10 millimeter, you have 7 new 10 millimeter bolts. These are very easy to drop, and that would be a huge bummer. So what I would suggest is that you put them into place first. You can reach in, set them into place. Now when you tighten them down, hand tight. Start at the center, then work your way out. Next, next, next. Okay, go through all of those to get all of the bolts into place. Now, once they're set in place, it's 89 inch-pounds of torque. Start in the center, work your way out. When you get finally done, double check them all again in the same pattern, just to make sure that as it settled into place, it didn't loosen any of the bolts, okay? So get those 7 bolts in place, and then torque them down. All right, so now that that's in and secure, go ahead and pull the plugs on all 6 of those injector ports. I'm not going to be doing port injection, at least at this time. So it comes with a series of 6 blanks. Now you're going to want to use a little bit of white silicone on each end, just to make sure that these don't pinch or tear when you set them into place. And then just gently insert them into place in each one of the ports. Then we're going to put a rail down over the top. Now it's also possible to do secondary fueling and some other setups with this. We're just going default setup for now. So go ahead and get all these set into place, and then we're going to put the rail over the top. Okay, so once you have the blanks in, go ahead and take your fuel rail, set it down into place. You may need to press down a little bit to get it to set in, because it comes over the top of those gaskets. Okay, but get those on, and then you'll see here and here where it lines up to bolt to the intercooler. Go ahead and take the last of the 2 bolts out of that fuel rail bag. These little guys that are 4 millimeters, they're 4 millimeter Allens on the top, and go ahead and secure those and get that set. All right, so next up we're going to reconnect these fittings here at the bottom. This one, the front one, is a little bit hard to see right now with this big coolant line in the way. But reconnect that line down. Make sure that they all click when they go into place. Connect that fitting, connect the evaporation fitting, make sure it clicks when it goes on, connect the back one. And then we're going to move to the big connection in the back. But also, you can use a little bit of coolant to lubricate the O-rings on the inside of those to make sure that they don't tear or pinch or anything when you put them on. But go ahead and get all 3 of those reconnected, and then we're going to move to the back. All right, so now you go on to reach behind, connect that main coolant line to the connection here. Again, you can lube the gasket with a little bit of coolant, make sure it snaps into place and clicks. Now, you then can take your expansion reservoir, fit the foot down into that new fitting here, and fit it onto the bracket, or onto the mount points here. You've got 2 supplied bolts left. They're the 3 millimeter button top. Put them here and here to secure the reservoir in place. With the reservoir tank attached and that good to go, now you can plug in this evaporation line here back in the back, so that would snap down into place. Put it into the clips right here, that one clip that you transferred, and then also we're going to be plugging the map back in here as well, with one clip here and one clip here. There's a little bit of a wire post back here in the back that we don't need anymore. You could potentially cut that off as you look at it, but go ahead and get these reconnected and use the last of the provided bolts, and that is a 4 millimeter Allen to connect that. And once that's all done, go ahead and reconnect the evaporation hose. Make sure that it gets onto this hose here with a good click. Hey, one-handed, not too bad. And then go ahead and plug the sensor back in. Make sure that that gets in as well. Good click, lock the tab down, and that's good. Okay, now a quick reminder, if you have not reconnected your intake pipe up to the bottom of the throttle manifold, go ahead and do that now. So you put the car back in the air. If you're using the Mishimoto one, you're going to use the worm drive. If you've got the OEM pipes, you're going to make sure that clip is seated. But go ahead and make sure that that's all set up and good to go. Once that's done, or if you haven't done that already, do it now. Once that's done, we're going to reinstall the water pump. So go ahead and just take the water pump, fit it back into place here. I would go ahead and plug it in first. So find the cable, which is fallen down at this point. Find the cable, plug it in back in the water pump, fit it down into place, and then go ahead and reconnect it. Quick review with the water pump in. Now remember, it goes down into a grommet. It's got a post on, so you kind of have to fit it from above to get it over the post for the nut, but also to get the post on the bottom into the grommets. So fit that down, snap on the front connection, snap on the top connection, and then go ahead and snap the hose back into the intercooler as well here. And again, make sure everything snaps. And you've got good, clean fittings in all cases, because last thing you want to do is have a leak once we start refilling the system. These hoses, you want to reinstall the overflow line back to the reservoir. Just press in, get a good click. Like that. And like that. There we go. Okay, so all that's good to go. Go ahead and grab your ECU box. We're going to slide that back into place and go ahead and put the 10mm bolts here and here to secure it back into place, and then we're going to start plugging it all back in. All right, so the ECU is in, and here's where all of your hard work and labeling is going to pay off to make the reinstallation of this easier. So you're just going to reverse order that you take it out, that you took it all out. Don't forget that this wiring harness has this big shuttle clip that fits back here in the back. So slide that shuttle back in for those 3 big wiring harnesses. Take the two, female ends that clip here and here, get those in place, and then slowly walk your way forward. These horseshoe clips, again, you bring them down, you press the plug into place, and you lock the horseshoe clip up. No, none of these wires should be tight. That should tell you they're in a wrong position if they can't seem to reach. Walk your list forward all the way through them all. Go ahead and get your ECU all plugged back in, including your wiring harness over here, right? This one clips on right here. This clips on and slides forward onto those posts right there. So we'll get this back in place, and we'll get everything all reconnected, including the top of your EDC controller right here. So slowly walk forward, and I'll show you what that looks like when it's done. All right, so reinstalled, as you can tell, everything fits in perfectly, and I would place each cable and then tear off my tape. So I definitely didn't do it beforehand. Wanted to make sure everything was set in correctly, so make sure that you get this post back in here into the bracket, plug that back in, get this clipped on. Make sure all of your main cabling harnesses are clipped up into place. They should be, or they wouldn't be sitting in tight. All of your plugs down the side, make sure that those locking tabs are pressed down. And this also goes for the 2 on this side as well. Make sure that they're in a locked down position as well, just like you would on any of the other sensors. Okay, so well done. Like I said, if you took your time and was very meticulous about that, that's not hard. It's just putting it back in the reverse order. You took it off and you labeled every one, and it's easy to do. Okay, so the last thing you want to do is reconnect this evaporation hose. Get a good click. You're going to do the same thing on this side. Get a good click, just like that. Make sure it's connected. All right, and we'll move on from there. All right, so before we put the cross brace on, just double check everything. Make sure you don't have anything unplugged. All your fittings are in and good. I don't have the top plastics on yet, of course, because of the way the M2, that plastic comes down over the top of the bolts a little bit. In addition, make sure to check this. If you unplug this to help get your intake in and out, make sure it's plugged back in. But really do a quick walkthrough to make sure you're not missing anything in your setup and you don't have anything left unplugged, any clips undone and the like. If not, go ahead and put your engine brace back on, whether it's the OEM or in my case, the keys brace. All right, so one last check here at the top before we crawl back underneath the car. So make sure all of your plastics are back on. Now keep in mind this is 56 Newton meters and the nuts are 28 Newton meters. Now this bolt is 56 plus 90, which means it's a stretch bolt. Now BMW suggests replacing it. I've seen people replace it or not, so that's up to you. But get all your plastics all down, get those plastic expanding rivets in, those push rivets all set, get everything tied up here up top. Now we're going to crawl underneath and we're going to install the stiffening plate. And in the M2 case, at least I found those 4 bolts out at the very ends of the wings, right? In the G80s, frequently are 21 millimeter bolts. In this case, I've got 16s all the way around. I usually will attach the center bolts first, just like when we took it off. I'll suspend the plate up and I'll attach from underneath. I'll show you that when I get underneath the car. Now, BMW also does recommend replacing those bolts. Those are 56 Newton meters plus 90, which means they're stretch. So you could potentially replace them all. I've seen a lot of people reuse them. It's entirely up to you. Okay, so let's get the car back in the air and let's get the stiffening plate on. All right, so here underneath the car, you can tell I've got the stiffening plate on partially. I've got 2 of the center bolts on very, very loosely because I want it to be able to move. You don't want to tighten it down yet because you want to be able to shift it around to get it in place, especially those wings out at the far end. Okay, so you just fit it back up into place, hold it there. I'm going to put all of the rest of the 16s in all the way around. Once I've got them all in and I feel like they're threading in cleanly, they're not the plate isn't misaligned at all, then I will start to tighten them down and then torque them down to 56 Newton meters. Also, while you're here, make sure that any coolant hoses you pulled from underneath are reconnected and you get a good solid click, which means the hose is on. Pull on them a little bit to make sure, but go ahead and check that. Go ahead and get your stiffening plate on, and then we're going to put on all the underbody plastics. All right, y'all. So the plastic is all buttoned up. All of your 10mm screws should be gone. Now, one quick hint, if you're using Quickjacks like me, 2 of the screws on the very back of those wings, those plastic wings, are very hard to get to. So what you can do is you can put it back on the ground and then use a standard floor jack to get it up in the air on the jack pad, and you can easily get to those 2 screws to put them back. So I actually have 4 screws left over right now because I'm going to put them on after I get the car down off the Quickjacks. All right, but that should be it. There should be no plastics left, no other screws left. You should be good to go. All right, y'all, so go ahead and clean up and put your tools away. You're all done, but I bet you're asking yourself, did you forget something? I didn't. So the car still doesn't have coolant, right? So you have to make sure to top your car off with coolant and then bleed it appropriately. Now, if you have a vacuum bleed system and an air compressor, that is the best way to do it. So if you have those tools, definitely use that. But if you don't, that's okay, because the car itself has a way of cycling that entire system. It just takes a little bit longer, you have to be a little bit more patient, and you have to have a trickle charger, which I have plugged in right now. Now, you might hear it running in the background, but I'm on, I think, my 5th pass, and I just added just a little bit more coolant, so it's really close to being done. The instructions on how to get your car to cycle that, it will be in the video description below. Make sure to check that out, along with the links for everything that you need to do this job, including all the tools and everything else. I'm really grateful to Mishimoto for making such a fantastic product. This is really, really good and is a key part of a build moving forward. Whether you live in hotter climes, you drive your car more aggressively, maybe going for big power, an upgraded intercooler is a really big deal. So make sure to check that out. I'm also really grateful to Keys Motorsports, got it from them. The link for that will be in the video description. Make sure to check them out, they're great people. While you're there, please make sure to click like and subscribe. It makes a huge difference to my channel and I would really appreciate it. Plus, you'll get notifications for upcoming projects, all kinds of things, new car reviews, you name it, and I can't wait to show you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next project.